This is brought to you by WordStream and BuzzSumo. My name is Kate. I'm our partner marketing specialist at WordStream. I'm just here to take care of a few house cleaning items, and then I'll quickly pass you off to the experts so we can dive right in. First off, for those who aren't familiar with us, WordStream is a search marketing company, and we've got a platform to make paid search easy for busy marketers, as well as do-it-for-me services. We're really excited to be working with the folks at BuzzSumo. They have a super powerful social analytics tool that can identify content that's performing best for any topic or any competitor. This webinar is brought to you as part of our webinar series in PPC University. It's our free online learning center. It has, as you can see, everything from the basics to advanced in search marketing. So you can check that out and check out the other webinars at wordstream.com/learn. Another great way to partake in today's event is to hop over on Twitter, and you can use the hashtag #ContentHacks to share tips that you love or memorable quotes or questions for the presenters, share some screenshots. We'll have someone monitoring Twitter to be replying to you guys and all that. So you can tweet at BuzzSumo, WordStream, and as well as to our speakers. I just want to let you know that the webinar is being recorded. I will send the slides and recording to everyone who registered shortly after the webinar. And we will have time for about 10 minutes of Q&A at the end. So as your questions come up, just type them directly into the control box, and I'll save them at the end. If you do have some issues with your sound, there is a phone number that you can call in on instead of using your computer. So give that a try if you're having some issues. All right, now I am psyched to introduce you to our speakers. Our first speaker is Larry Kim. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Larry.
Hey, Kate. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for organizing. I'm founder of WordStream. Been doing this for a while. Thanks for everyone for coming.
And you can see Larry's adorable little kid there. He had a baby about 8 months ago, I think, and you can see more pictures, hashtag PPC kid. So we love Larry's baby, Julian, and he comes around the office sometimes. It's a treat. And our speaker from BuzzSumo is Steve Rayson. He's the director there. And it looks like his kids are a little bit older. It seems like. You can tell us a little bit about yourself, Steve.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Steve, and really pleased to be here this afternoon. Welcome, everyone. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a little bit older than Larry, so I had my kids at least 22 years ago, and they're still adorable, but a little bit older, and I suspect a little bit more expensive. So.
Great. Well, we're really excited. I don't want to take any more of your time with the details, so look for an email with the recording after the webinar, and other than that, we'll get started.
Great. Thanks very much, Kate. Before we started, we just wanted to kick off with a poll. So, Kate, I think you're going to launch this for us.
Yep, there you go. You can choose what your biggest marketing challenge is. Content marketing challenge. Okay, so I'm seeing some answers start to come in. I see a big portion of the audience is unsure how to promote their content, and another portion finds it difficult to consistently produce the content. I am going to close the poll so you guys can see what your fellow participants say, where you fall. Hopefully you guys can see those results there. Just a few are limited by staff and budget, but most are here to learn about how to promote and how to produce more and learn what to create. Very helpful. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so if it's okay, Kate, shall I kick off?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Great. So just to tell you a little bit about BuzzSumo, so you know where I'm coming from. We really built BuzzSumo just over a year ago to help content marketers to address some of those issues and challenges that you've just been answering on the poll there, which is how to understand what content resonates, how to consistently produce content which meets what the audience is looking for, and also to understand how it's being amplified so that your promotion strategy can really sit on the back of knowing what's working out there in terms of how content is being amplified. And as I say, we're just over a year old now, so just so you know a little bit about the background. And in terms of this afternoon, Larry's got 5 great content hacks to share with you, and I just wanted to share with you some of my experience as well from our first year at BuzzSumo. The big first question for me is we all have limited resources. We're all trying to consistently produce content, and we want to produce consistently good content. And it seems to me the real way sometimes is that we produce content, and I have to put my hands up here as well, so it's not always necessarily hits the mark. It doesn't always resonate with the audience, and the biggest waste of time for all of us is if we produce content that doesn't work really. And I think there's so much we can do to increase our odds, to improve our odds, to produce content that doesn't waste our time, to produce consistent content that hits the mark, and that's what I'm going to try and focus on this afternoon. This afternoon I'm in London, so yeah, you guys in the US still in the morning. So in terms of just my experience in doing this, 2 things I just wanted to highlight. One is just our BuzzSumo experience. I say we've been going just over a year. These are our actual sessions from our Google Analytics for the last 12 months. So we've increased our traffic at least tenfold. We've still got a long way to go to catch up WordStream, and we're hoping we'll get there. But we're increasingly quite slowly and steadily there, and I want to share a bit of that experience. But the other experience I want to share with you today is a study that we did. We did a study last year of over 100 million articles from our BuzzSumo database of social shares of content, just to try to understand what works. And I'm going to share with you some of the findings from that and some of the updated findings from that as we go through the session this afternoon. So just a few points about my background and where I'm coming from in terms of my experience. So I don't know how many of you identify with this picture here, but you publish your post, you close your eyes, you cross your fingers, and you really hope it's the one that's going to resonate this time. But for me, it really isn't about writing and hoping. We can do so much more to improve our odds before we publish content, so that we can publish consistently good content. So it's not about writing and hoping, and hopefully not too many of us identify with this image every time. It's clear to me that your content plan has to be data-driven. You can improve your odds by knowing that. So if you research, you know what content's resonating with your audience. You know what they're going to share, what views, what generates conversions. You know what types of content formats are working. Is it quizzes this time, or is it videos, etc.? You know which networks are working in your particular topic areas. Is it Facebook? Is it Twitter? And it varies a lot from from topic to topic. So also you can understand what's working for your competitors and see, can we learn from them? And I think as well as knowing what's being shared, what's resonating, is to understand how that content's being amplified. From day one, you want a good understanding of why is it being shared, how is it being amplified, who's doing that. So for me, one of the key tasks before you even start writing content is to understand what's resonating and to do that content research. And it improves your odds consistently and enables you to deliver content that hopefully will generate your views and ultimately your conversions. The second thing I just wanted to draw on from my experience is there's a myth that if you produce quality content, people will find it. And I just don't think that's true. There's just so much content. People are not going to find a quality needle in that haystack, no matter how good or how fine the quality of the steel in that needle. So it's just not true if you produce quality content that people are going to find it and start sharing it for you. You've really got to have a promotion plan, and you've got to have this from day one, even before you started writing your content, and Larry will talk about this. And to me personally, it's not just about distributing content, it's about amplifying it. It's about actually increasing the leverage of the numbers of shares and numbers of views, and that involves things like outreach with influencers, promotion, and I think more importantly, it involves re-promotion to continually and consistently push that content out there. So they're two of the big things I wanted to focus on in my short session this afternoon. So the first thing is start with content research, and I think you've got to be honest with yourselves. Ask yourself, what do you know about your market? What determines what type of content you create? So you're creating an article, you're writing a blog post. Why are you doing that? What evidence do you have that that's going to work? What networks will that resonate on? Which content formats work best on which networks, for example? Which influencers will help you drive up views and conversions to that traffic? So you've got to ask yourself, what do you really know? And that's where why we built BuzzSumo really in the first place. is to enable you to give insights into what's resonating. And I should just say that there's a free version of BuzzSumo, so the things I'm going to show you now you can just do in the free version. But the first thing I think you should do is simply use a tool such as BuzzSumo. You can type in your topic or your industry area, such as content marketing in this case, and it will show you the most shared content for that topic. You can filter it by day, etc. So it'll show you the most shared content. It'll show you the number of shares it got, the number of shares by network, the headline, the domain it comes from, and the author. So you can get a sense of what's resonating in your area. So it gives you a much better chance of producing content that will also resonate. And it's not just, to me, about typing in topics. You can also search for a domain. You can see the most shared content on any domain. And what I like to do, and this is one of my sort of tips really, is I like to get a number of industry sites, put them all into BuzzSumo. So in this case, say I was searching for SEO, I might put in searchengineland.com or Search Engine Journal, etc. A series of big industry sites, and then I can see what's resonating across the industry, what sort of content is resonating in that particular industry, especially if it's a new industry to me or a new market that I'm looking at, possibly for a client. So I want to know what's getting shared across the whole industry. The other thing is that it's not good enough to do your content research once. It's not good enough to say, okay, I know what was working. I did this big piece of research 6 months ago. Things change, and they change quickly. My kids can't believe that was ever time before mobile phones, yet alone big phones as we had here. And I do remember a number of these. And things just change so quickly nowadays. You've really got to have your finger on the pulse as to what's working. And for me, you've got to understand those changes. So if I was to ask you, could you answer this? What was the most shared content in your industry last year? Did it change? What was the most shared content last month? What about last week? Actually, what was the most shared content in your industry yesterday, in the last 24 hours? And I think you need to understand the changes that are taking place. And with a tool like BuzzSumo, you can just filter by date, and you can see what was the most shared content in my industry yesterday, or what was the most shared content of my 5 biggest competitors in the last month. And it gives you a much better understanding of what's working in the market. And that's important because none of us have a monopoly on what works. We all have good ideas, we have stuff that's worked in the past, but none of us have a monopoly on good ideas. We need to look at what's working and then see if we can reuse it. And publishers are great at this. Publishers are really good at finding a format that works and then working it very hard. I did an example here. I searched for some of the most shared BuzzFeed quizzes last year, and those guys are really good at getting their quizzes shared. And you'll see quite quickly a common format here, the hardest Disney quiz, the hardest Mean Girls quiz, etc. They found a format that's working, they're reusing it. And we can reuse other people's formats. So you can see here the quizzes that they're doing, but maybe that might work in our industry, or maybe I can reuse what a competitor works. So it's you're not always just trying new things on your own. Sometimes what works continues to work and consistently works. So try to work out what's actually performing in your area. So and I'm sure you're all trying to answer the break.
Just a minute, Steve. You're showing a lot of great data on there, and I think some of our audience missed that this is data coming right from the BuzzSumo tool. So just so you guys know that this is data that Steve's pulled using BuzzSumo.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Thanks for that. Yes, no, I should have mentioned that this is data that comes straight from the BuzzSumo tool. So we crawl content all the time on the web. We continually monitor the number of social shares it gets, and then we allow you to slice and dice that data. So here I did a search for BuzzFeed.com quizzes, and I found the most shared quizzes on BuzzFeed.com, so the data's coming out of BuzzSumo, and we just periodically continually update those social shares. So, and that just helped me see what was working for BuzzFeed, and it seemed to be hardest quizzes. They had a format that was working, and for those of you trying to answer the question on the left-hand side, the Breaking Bad one, I think it was I Am Walter Hartnell White. I think my son will correct me. He seems to be the expert on Breaking Bad. And I think just consistently look at what's working. So I did another search about what's simply the most shared content on LinkedIn. What can I learn about that? And there's a guy called Travis Bradbury. He gets some really shared posts. I think he's the most shared person on LinkedIn. And look at some of his most successful posts here. It's saying how successful people stay calm, how successful people handle toxic people, how 9 things successful people won't do. people on LinkedIn are interested in how to be successful, etc. And there's clearly a format that's working. So you can do research to understand what's working and see whether that might work for you or what you can learn from that. I think the other thing is to understand, it's fine to understand that that's the most shared content, but we really want to understand why is it the most shared content. So why was that shared particularly well? And for me, a lot of that's about amplification, and amplification takes place in a number of ways, but two of the main ways are people who share it and people who link to it. So within the tool of BuzzSumo, for any piece of content, you can click on View Sharers, and we'll show you the Twitter sharers for that content. Because it's quite interesting to see who's helped amplify that content, and I often do it to find influencers. I find a piece of content that worked really well, see who shared it, and then build an influencer list out of that particular group of people. So understanding who's amplifying it in your particular marketplace, and it's not always who you think it is. So it's quite interesting to see who's sharing that content. And the other thing is to seeing who's linking to the content, and I like to do this in real time. We have an alerts tool in BuzzSumo, so you can get alerted in real time. But so, for example, this is one here for a site, and it's showing me new links to that site in real time. So I'm saying there was a new link 14 minutes ago, a new link 53 minutes ago, for example. So I can see, okay, what's happening there? Is that an outreach opportunity for me, for example, to get them also to link to my content? I like to see what's happening, and I like to see it in real time, as well as doing periodic pieces of research. So I promised at the beginning that so we've done a big piece of research, and I'm going to show you some general findings about what works. And my only caveat really here is that it does vary from market to market, so you really have to do your own research in your own areas because it can vary. But I'm just going to show you the general things that worked from our research. So say this was based on 100 million articles, so it was a fairly large database of content that we looked at. So we found that long-form content gets a lot more shares than short-form content. This particular example is I just did a piece of research around articles on SEO and had a look by length of content. You can see consistently the longer the content, the more shares you're getting. And we found that to be a fairly consistent pattern across most areas. Not all areas, but most areas. We found that posts with images get more shares. I think lots of research has been done that shows this. You often get twice as many shares if you have a post with research, with the images placed within it. The other thing is content formats really have a major impact. In some areas, it's list post that works. In another, it's an infographic that works. And again, using a tool such as BuzzSumo, you can start to analyze what's working. So I did a piece of research on articles about blogging. And here I can see the infographics work much better than others. In fact, an infographic gets more than twice as many shares as most other content formats. So that might influence the way I go when I'm designing content. But this, again, can vary a lot from area to area. But we found that content formats really can have quite a big difference, and certain ones work better on different networks. List posts work really well, and if you're going to do list posts, 10 does seem to be the magic number. I pulled up a bit of analysis of some of the most shared Moz posts in the last year, and you can see at the beginning of each of those 3 posts the number 10. So list posts tend to get a lot of shares, and 10 seems to be the magic number there in terms of getting the most shares, more so than other numbers, even though lots of people have lucky numbers such as 7. We found that emotional content engages people and it encourages people to share. So if they're moved by content, they might be outraged, it might be shock, it might be awe, it might be some other form of emotion such as laughter, but it engages. And I think the Budweiser Super Bowl ad was a classic example. It did engage people emotionally with a little story. It's only a 1-minute story of the lost dog. It got over 1 million shares and I think 10 million plus views. Coming to the point of promotion, a number of you said in the outset that promotion's interesting for you and how to do that. My view is you do have to find influencers to amplify your content. It's absolutely critical. And we found that just one influencer sharing can result in 30% or more shares. And we had a definition of influencers where we looked at the average retweets they were getting. But what was particularly interesting is there was a sort of an extrapolation. As you got more influencers sharing a post, so you got more shares. But once you got to 5 influencers sharing the post, often it became a breakout post. Often it went viral. So as soon as 5 influencers shared it, it really jumped. And that might be because it was seen as being more authoritative, more trusted, for example, by the number of influencers sharing it. but there's certainly a point in our data where as soon as you've got 5 influencers, it really jumped in terms of the number of shares and number of views that you get. So not all sharers are equal. And so coming back to a point on promotion is you've got to spend as much time on this, I think, as on researching and writing, and it starts at the beginning. And if you simply publish your content, tweet it, forget it, everyone else is going to forget it as well. So you've got to have a sustained plan, and Larry will talk about this in his section, particularly including paid, owned, and earned media. And it seems to me that influencer outreach is really just an essential part of your promotion strategy. So 5 quick lessons from me before I move on to Larry, who's got a lot more to say. So my first key point is research what's resonating with your audience. It may not be as pretty, but it works. So really research what's resonating with your audience so you have a really good understanding, you have data-driven decisions about the content that you're creating so that it consistently hits the mark. Reuse winning content formats. Don't pretend we all have the best ideas. We look at what's working somewhere else and reuse it. This is a quiz that you may have seen. Which classic rock band are you? I don't know if you know how many shares that got. That quiz got 1.8 million shares. So look at winning content formats. Certainly BuzzFeed do this and A/B test and check it out. Understand how content is being amplified and who the influencers are. So, some influencers are worth a lot more than other influencers. So one Larry Kim is worth dozens of other people engaging with your content. So really understand who's amplifying the content in your areas, and then obviously do your outreach and build your relationships with those influencers. But it really does vary, and I like to look at who's sharing particular content and making sure that I can build relationships with those right people, and sometimes they're very niche influencers. Promotion, in my view, is people are not going to find quality content. It's a busy world out there. There's a lot going on, and I just don't believe people are going to find your content just because it's quality. It may happen sometimes. You need to dedicate time to sort of promotion and re-promotion and making sure you're consistently pushing it out to people. And the final one for me is that things change. You have to be flexible. Things change. You have to monitor and track trends. It might well be that infographics are working, but that's changed. And in my experience, there are some consistent formats that work over time, but there are also some things that change quite quickly, and it's worth keeping a track on the trends so that you're hitting the mark, really. So that's very much my introduction, some of the lessons I've learned from our first year at BuzzSumo. So it's there's a free version. Do try it out if you want to see what's resonating in your area. But thanks for listening to that, and I'm now going to hand over to Larry, who's going to sort of expand on this with 5 very specific content hacks that you can undertake.
Thanks, Steve. Kate, can you make me the presenter?
Larry, can you speak up a little bit for us?
Oh, can you make us? Oh, there it is. Make me the presenter. Thank you.
Yep, you're the presenter now. You can share your screen.
Awesome. All right, thanks so much, Steve. That was a great kind of overview there. You guys, I know there's a lot of WordStreamers on the phone here today. BuzzSumo is actually a really cool tool that it's actually part of my daily workflow for content marketing. I do a lot of content marketing, and I think it's one of the more cooler, more interesting tools out there in terms of content analytics. There's so many of them, so I definitely recommend checking that out. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit different, change gears here. It's a little bit more specific on specific my 5 best hacks to get like 10 times the number of views and shares for your content. So like, yes, content promotion is important, but how specifically should you do the promotion and all that stuff? So specific hacks that you can use to really juice your efforts here. And basically, I just want to start by saying that like most of your effort in content marketing is useless. So like for WordStream's blog, okay, this is kind of embarrassing, but I'm going to share it with you. 96% of the blog posts on WordStream's blog goes nowhere. All right, so like there's roughly 1,250 articles on the site, and the top 50% of those articles, so just 4% of them, generates roughly half the traffic. And the rest of them, the other 1,200, it was like why did we even bother with those? Like, we could have deleted them and it would not have made any difference. Like they're just so small. Like, you know, and so basically I want to talk today about this concept that I'm calling content unicorns. If you follow my PPC work, you'll know I'm a big fan of being exceptional and trying to get these outliers, and I call them unicorns. So in this case, I'm defining them as sort of like the top, you know, 3, 4, 5% of your content that tends to drive, you know, the lion's share of your traffic in terms of, like, you know, it varies by site, but typically, you know, there's like a, you know, 80-20, 90-10 kind of rule where the top few percent generates most of the shares on social media, as well as, you know, when you look at the link profile, if you're doing SEO for your site, you'll find that the majority of high-value links to your site comes from these unicorns. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, analysis of my last, you know, 2-3 years of doing content marketing and trying to figure out, like, of those 50 unicorns, those rare and beautiful creatures that generate so many hits and links and shares, like, what are the common denominators? Like, you know, how do they come to be, and where do they live, and how can you get your own content unicorn? So I wanted to kind of give you some specific hacks and ideas on how to do this. So basically, in my analysis here, what I found was that they kind of fell into 3 different categories, these content unicorns. The first one was kind of obvious. It was they were aligned with a high volume keyword. Now, this is nothing new. It's just like an evergreen keyword. But the point I just wanted to make here is that, like, how powerful evergreen really is. Okay, so, like, you know, I spent maybe $2,000 with a graphic designer creating an infographic called "How Does the AdWords Auction Work?" So basically, I just sketched out kind of, you know, the whole auction process in AdWords, and he spent maybe 20 hours just making it into this graphic. This graphic now when you do a search for, like, you know, you can just pull up a Google window, like, what's AdWords, or how does AdWords work, or, you know, like, any informational query related to AdWords, this thing ranks. So this thing has been, like, you know, I published this like 3-4 years ago, and it's just like the gift that keeps on giving, like thousands of hits every week, literally. And just because I produced sort of the best answer, you know, for a particular question that has high volume, and so it gets cited in all sorts of, you know, research papers, and you know, Harvard Business Review and all these things. Like, whenever they mention AdWords, they reference this thing. And so this is an example of a unicorn, content unicorn, whose promotional angle was that it was aligned with a high volume keyword, and thus the you know, it just, people will just find it because they're actually looking for an answer here. The second type of you know, in terms of the groupings of content unicorns, the second type was this notion of a trending topic. So this is a little piece of research that I did, you know, in 2012, so like just over 2 years ago, and it was really clever. It was kind of I did a research piece on comparing the effectiveness of Facebook ads versus the Google Display Network ads. Okay, now that in itself is not that interesting. What was really interesting is that I timed the release of this study to be 3 days before the Facebook IPO, and so in some ways, like, this was actually a unicorn among unicorns. So this, like the super unicorn, this one generated, you know, over 10,000 press pickups in every, you know, newspaper and new technology website in the world. Like, literally, I'm just showing you a screen capture. I'm not exaggerating. This got over 10,000 pickups. You can, you know, my link profile, I got like 100,000 links from this dumb thing. Basically, it was, how did I do this? You know, I just looked into some accounts and came up with some data and made it into an infographic. But what made it so powerful, like the promotional angle behind this particular piece of content, was that it leveraged the power of a trending topic. So, you know, everybody wanted to know, you know, what's the story with the Facebook IPO and how much is the stock worth, and, you know, and this was a really interesting little piece of information that helped a lot of writers file even more interesting stories. The third bucket of kind of content in terms of like the 3 buckets of unicorns, has to do with like something that Steve was kind of talking about. It has to do with kind of topics that are engineered for social media sharing. There's certain topics like successful people on LinkedIn, or you know, those quizzes for Disney or whatever. Like there's just some topics that are just so viral, and it just something about the topic just makes it go really, really viral and gets shared a lot. And companies that do this really well are like Upworthy and the like. And you can see like these articles are not optimized for keywords, and they're not trending topics either. They're just like very unusual. Like, you know, first they try to kill Jackie, and then this incredible rhino shows up. It's like, I need to know what this is about. Like, I'm going to click on this and share it because it's so unusual. And so the third bucket of unicorns is kind of a new bucket for me. Like, I've traditionally focused more on SEO and trending topics, but over the last, I'd say, 13, 14 months, I've been, you know, I have this column at Inc. magazine. I'm one of their top columnists, and I've been just trying to experiment with this format of, you know, coming up with, you know, viral headlines that get shared on social media a lot. And here's just one example of an article for one of my columns here. It's like the unusual strategy that made this woman a multi-billionaire. So like, this article generated 23,400 shares in less than a month. It was the #2 most popular story on Inc. magazine last month, and it generated something like 500,000 page views. So, you know, like, how the heck did it do that? Well, you know, it's like Steve was saying, you kind of have to figure it out and do your research. And basically, what I found was like things that do really well here are things like that are very inspirational. Like, wow, this young woman is a billionaire, and she, you know, it's unexpected. She dropped out of college, you know, and it's got group inclusion dynamics. It's like a young woman, like, so people want to like cheer for the demographic group, you know, like. Just hearing me talk about this, I'm sure you want to now read this story and figure out what was the unusual thing that made this woman a multi-billionaire. So like, there's certain topics that just do very well, and you need to work on that skill. So those are the 3 types of pieces of content, like categories. I want to talk a little bit about like some hacks, how to engineer some of these content unicorns. And by this, I'm not going to focus on the SEO ones because, like, you know, SEO is its own topic. We could talk about that forever. I'm going to talk mostly about the social types of contents and the trending news contents because I think that there's a lot more have to do with content analysis here. So hack number 5 has to do with you know, content promotion happens before writing your piece, not after. Okay, like, this is just so crazy. So many writers and bloggers that I know, they write the piece and then they think about like, how should I promote this? And that is just, in fact, that used to be me like 2 or 3 years ago. You know, and then I realized, wait a minute, I'm doing this backwards. I should do the content promotion first. So what the heck am I talking about? Well, let me just give you an example here. Here's a little article that I wrote. It has to do with like some Panda 4.0 algorithm update that happened last May, and basically eBay, by my calculations, lost 80% of their organic rankings. So this story actually made it to the top of Hacker News. You know, this screenshot has it in spot number 4, but it was actually in #1 spot. I just didn't screenshot it at the right time. You know, it got picked up in about 100 financial newspapers. You know, and citing, you know, Larry of WordStream says blah blah blah. You know, so it was a very, very powerful story. But why did I do that? And how was it so successful? Well, before, like, it has to do with finding this angle for your content and thinking about the content promotion. Basically, you need to think about like, who will help you promote this article, you know, and make sure that there's like a so what, like something in it for them. So like, thinking of like the investors that invest in eBay, you know, they just lost a lot of traffic. Are they going to want to read my article and share it and write about it to explain how this change in Google rankings is going to impact their stock price? You know, I'm not going to go through all of them here, but you know, marketers are going to be interested in learning about, like, you know, the kind of algorithmic issues and what can happen if you and do bad SEO things, and the general public, they're going to be interested in sharing this thing because it just looks like Google and eBay are having a big fight, and of course everyone wants to see this this kind of story. So like, if you can't come up with a chart like this where you don't have to illustrate it, but if you can't list out like who the audience is for and why they will share it, and what will compel them to share it before kind of writing out the idea, don't bother. So just the key takeaway here, the success of the content marketing project is almost entirely determined in the planning phase, even before a single word gets typed. Number 4 has to do with building out your content promotion networks. And for this, there's an old saying, if a content doesn't show up in a user's social timeline or in their inbox, was it even created? That's not an old saying. I just made that up. But basically, it's true. Like no one's like going to your blog every day to check for new things. They're doing their other things. They're scanning their Twitter, their Google+, their LinkedIn, and if you show up in their timelines, then they'll see it. If you don't, it's like you never created any content in the first place. So this is a really important revelation for me. I would say maybe 2 years ago, and at the time I didn't have any social kind of presence. I didn't really have much of a presence on Twitter or LinkedIn or Google+ or Facebook. And so over the last 18 months, I've been trying to build up these numbers so that I have a scalable distribution network for the content that I produce. So like LinkedIn, like how the heck did I have 16,107 followers on LinkedIn? Did you even know there's such a thing as followers on LinkedIn? There are. Basically, what you do is you do LinkedIn blogging, and those blog posts kind of show up in people's timelines, and they can follow you. So that's the main way that I accumulated those 16,000 followers in the last year. Twitter, it's really, really important because thought leaders hang out there. Google+, it's kind of interesting for me in that it's internet marketing, but like it's not that great in a lot of different verticals and niches beyond internet marketing, I gotta say. So what if you don't have 50,000 Twitter fans or whatever? That's kind of hard to do. And it could take forever actually, and you might never get to that number. And so that's okay. There's workarounds here. You can leverage other people's audiences. It doesn't have to be on your blog. I mean, of course that's preferable, but like if you have 0 followers and 0 subscribers to your blog, then you're probably better off leveraging people who do have audiences. So like here's an article, like I have a lot of columns that I write for like marketing profs or like Search Engine Journal, and look at this, like what is this marketing process? 8,600 views and something like, what does that mean? 2,500 shares, and then here's one from Search Engine Journal, 2,300 shares. Like they have audiences, so I can just be a contributor there, or give them something interesting that they're looking for, and it's as if I'm kind of borrowing their feeds. Another idea has to do with like content syndication. So like there's sites out there that are really desperate for content, and so what they'll do is instead of producing new content, they will partner with websites to kind of syndicate, meaning copy your existing content with permission. And so just a couple examples, like I syndicate content to like Business Insider. Look at that article that got 500,000 views on Inc. It just got another 180,000 on Business Insider for free. Same thing with business to community. They syndicate the WordStream blog. So just additional exposure to tap into other people's audiences. Very powerful. Number 3 hack has to do with leveraging paid promotions. The truth might burn your ears, but social media is becoming kind of increasingly more of a paid venue. And I want to explain to you why this is so important, like doing the paid stuff on social media. In order to do this, I want to explain to you just quickly, how does content go quote-unquote viral? What I mean by that is just like how like it doesn't have to get the millions of shares, but like how does something get lots of shares? And just to give you a quick example, again, the reason why I'm doing all these examples, I didn't want to make it so high level. I wanted to give you specific, actual examples here. And so here's an article that I posted to the WordStream blog, September 19th, so just a couple months ago. It's about the Google Gmail integration with Google Plus quietly shelved. So I noticed that when you sign up for Gmail, it does no longer ask you to sign up for Google+. I thought that was very interesting, so I blogged about it, and then I shared it to my Google+ and to my my Twitter here. Within 2 hours, Martin Beck, Marketing Len, saw my post, and he wrote it up. It says Google+ is no longer a requirement for creating a Google account, and then he linked to my blog and he mentioned me. So that was really nice of him. And then over the weekend, something incredible happened. Like by Saturday, the story was in Engadget, VentureBeat, Gizmodo, The Register, and by Monday, it was in, like, I couldn't even put out all the logos. It was in over 250 publications, like Business Insider, Life Hackers, CNET, Fast Company, et cetera, et cetera. Even mainstream news outlets like the Washington Post and Wall Street Journal picked up the story. So how the heck did this happen? Well, the key takeaway is that, well, first you have to have something interesting content, obviously, but that's not enough. What you also need is influential people like that Martin Beck guy to find your stuff. And so they don't always have to be journalists either. They can be, just pundits. Like there's this guy, Tim O'Reilly. He's a technology pundit. He owns the O'Reilly Book Media company that creates. It's a publishing empire basically. And he just happened to share one of my infographics the other day, and boom! I just got 20,000 hits within like 3 hours. It's crazy. So what I'm trying to tell you is that the social promotion of content to specific influencers. So if you can get your content in front of Martin Beck or Tim O'Reilly, that increases the chances of your content getting noticed. And so you see that little red dot, like, I was saying, like, most of the articles do very poorly and some of them do very, very well. When you get your content in front of someone like Martin Beck or Tim O'Reilly, what happens is that it gets noticed, and if they share it, it kind of moves them out of kind of like this kind of unremarkable bucket and into the unicorn category. And so basically the question then is like, okay, great, Larry, how do you target super connectors on social media? Well, that's where the ads come in. So like on Facebook, it's so easy. You can create custom audiences. So like all you need to know is all the influential people in Facebook IDs or their phone numbers, and Facebook will match their account to their phone number or email or Facebook ID, and then you can share content with them so that it shows up in their timeline. And of course, they're on Facebook. 1.2 billion people are on Facebook. You can do the same thing on Twitter. It's like you go into Twitter, you create these things called tailored audiences, and it's so powerful because you can upload Twitter IDs of the people who are the super connectors that you want to see your content, and then you can promote that content in a paid way. It's not too expensive. Maybe it costs like $50 or $20 because it's a targeted list of maybe 1,000 people, not 1 million people. So you spend $50 and you'll get your content noticed. And so then the question is like, okay, great, I'm going to do this, but how do you find the influencers? And here's another cool thing about kind of BuzzSumo. It helps you find influencers. You just type in a topic that you're interested in, and it actually shows people who are influential in those spaces. Although, Steve, I gotta complain about these rankings. Like, what the heck? Why am I at the bottom of this list? Just kidding. Anyways, it has to do with, oh yeah, so what I'm saying here is that the content, not all content needs to be promoted to super connectors. Only the newsy kind of social media, like great 5% of your content should be promoted, okay, and pitched. Most of our blog posts is like, 5 things my cats taught me about PPC. That's kind of interesting, but I don't think it's going to win a Pulitzer Prize. I don't think it's going to be written up in the Wall Street Journal. So like, I probably wouldn't want to promote this content to the Wall Street Journal editors. Instead, what you can do is you can use remarketing. So the people who are going to engage in sort of more generic content, just like things my cat taught me about PPC marketing, the people who will engage with that are people who've recently visited your blog, and so you can do remarketing lists in Twitter and in Facebook. and it's not going to give you like like complete viral like 100 pickups in the Wall Street Journal and stuff, but it'll definitely improve your reach. So we're almost done here. This is a really quick one. It has to do with not forgetting the mainstream media. So far I've been talking a lot about blogs and sites like Marketing Land and all this stuff, but like there are mainstream media sites with huge reach like Fox News and CNN and NPR and BBC, and their producers, just like the bloggers out there, they need stories too. And a lot of things, thing I notice is that a lot of people just forget to pitch these other medias, and then I think that's a mistake because, like, Fox News has like 2 million subscribers, like watching their show, and that's a lot of free exposure if you can get your content pitched to them. All they do is they just make it visual. They'll turn your content, like they found one of my articles and they just turned it into a bunch of pictures and had me comment on it. So it's hugely valuable, and as a plus, you can kind of save the recording and show it to your mom, and she'll say, they're like, wow, it's like you were on TV, that's amazing, and so it's valuable exposure for your business and really fun experience too. So we're down to my number 1 hack, and I think this is actually the most profound hack of them all. It has to do with like the 80-20 rule of content time allocation. So like I used to spend most of my time kind of writing stuff, and now I completely flipped it on its head. I spend 80% of my time doing the content analytics, the topic research, and only 20% of the time actually writing. And so how do I do this specifically? Well, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that I tweet, 20 things a day or something like that. Well, I'm actually testing out a lot of content. So what I'm doing is I think things are interesting, but rather than writing them up and blogging about them right away, I'm going to just share them once to see how they do. So here's one tweet that there's this thing called the Twitter Analytics where you can kind of see how your tweets are doing, like in terms of how many people saw it, how many retweets you got, and what was the percentage of people who were engaging with that post in terms of retweets, etc. And basically, the idea here is that you post stuff to Twitter first because that takes 10 seconds rather than writing up an entire blog post, which takes 2 hours. And basically, you take the ones that do well, and then you write up the ones that did the best, right? So this one here, the Mindset of Entrepreneur had an 8% engagement rate. My average engagement rate is 3%, so this is like 2.5 times better. And so I just said, okay, I'm going to write it up for Inc. And boom, it got 6,500 shares in just a few days, and that's like what you need to know is that it's 10 times higher than their average shares per article. So another way of doing the analysis has to do with being inspired by what works. So I don't have all the time in the day to write stuff. I actually have other things going on, like running WordStream and stuff like this. And basically, it has to do with I don't want to write about everything about AdWords, just the big topics. So what I do is I do a news scan. Like I search for topics, what's the big topic, from last week related to AdWords? Well, it has to do with this new change to upgraded URLs for tracking parameters. So yesterday, I jumped on that story because why? Because it was in the top 5% of the stories done that week, and I'm not gonna go all in on every story, just the ones that are like really proven, and that makes it my time worth so much more in terms of the effort. So look, guys, those are my 5 hacks. I hope they were helpful. There's just really 2 takeaways here. One has to do with just this observation with most of the content going nowhere, and you've got to really make less donkeys and more unicorns, because it's just the benefits are so ridiculously huge when you are able to hit those unicorns. The other has to do with something that Steve talked about was it shouldn't be so random. The success shouldn't be just left up to chance. You can make your own luck, and hopefully those 5 hacks that we talked about will help you make your own luck. Hey, do you want to talk a little bit about the offers, Kate?
Yeah. Hey guys, this is Kate again. Thanks, Larry. That was really, really awesome data and examples that you shared and tactics. And Steve, I learned a lot listening to you as well. If you guys haven't seen what's going on over on Twitter, it's blowing up, so check it out. But before we get into our question and answer, we just have a couple special offers for you guys. We appreciate you showing up, and we want to help you get the most for your time. And some of you out there are AdWords advertisers, WordStream, we're here for you guys. And we have these 2 free tools to help you audit your AdWords account and your PPC landing pages. Those are the URLs there to do it on your own, or you can hop on the phone and do it with a WordStream Google AdWords certified rep, and they'll walk you through an audit of your account and your pages and help you see what's working and what's not. Beyond that, we can give you a one-on-one demo of WordStream Advisor, our platform, and you can also get 30% off BuzzSumo Pro for 3 months. I know that they have a couple-week free trial, and we'd also like to give you a special discount for showing up today. A lot of that data that you saw throughout the presentation was pulled using BuzzSumo, so I love that tool. I know Larry uses it probably almost a daily basis, so you guys will find it super helpful tool, I'm sure. So I'm going to leave this up for a little while so you guys can keep answering away, and then we'll jump right into questions. So a repeated question that I got was, for what if I'm in a niche market or a small business? How do I come up with content ideas that are going to go viral?
Yeah, I mean, if I jump in on that, Kate, I mean, from my side, I would do those searches to see what's the most shared in that particular area. So I would focus in on that niche area. So I'd do a search for the niche area. I'd see what's getting shared in that particular area. So you can focus right down into small niches. It doesn't need thousands and thousands of shares. Just focus in, I think, on your niche area and see what's the most shared. And then you can create ideas around that. So if you see something that's working, you maybe want to take a contrary position to that. You could take that content, take a contrary position to engage people, or do it in a different format, do it as a slideshare format or a video format. So yeah, certainly I focus in a lot just going down to very niche areas. In fact, in some ways I get more traction in the niche areas than I get in the really big broad areas where I'm competing with much bigger players.
Hey, so guys, the strategies that I was talking about today are applicable in any niche, okay? Because within any niche, there's going to be kind of the top 5% of content, okay? Like whether you're talking about underwater basket weaving or AdWords, there's always going to be, some content that's going to rise to the top 5% by definition, and so all I'm saying is you use content analytics tools like BuzzSumo and other tools to figure out what's the best stuff, and then it's viral. It's not the absolute number of shares. It's not like 10,000 or 5,000 or 20,000. What matters is it the best for that niche? Okay.
Cool. That's really, really helpful. You also both of you talked about influencers. How do I go about finding influencers in my market, in my industry?
Yeah, if I jump in first on that, I mean, you can use tools, and there are lots of influencer tools out there, the Follow Once, Little Birds, BuzzSumo, where you can search for influencers in particular topics. Personally, I quite like to find an article that's really relevant to my niche area. So find an article that's well shared in my niche area, and then I see who shared that, and then I work out who's sort of amplifying that content, and I identify the influencers at that level. I also tend to go through the list and resort it. Often with a tool like BuzzSumo or others, you can filter. So it's not always the number of followers. I look at retweet ratios and things like that, so how much engagement they're getting. And often you'll find some people with relatively small numbers of followers, but actually getting a lot of engagement. And I think sometimes there's so much focus on influencer marketing that there's some big influencers who are really overloaded with requests. It's good to try and find your niche influencers who can help you really. So there's some of the ways that I certainly do it.
For me, I look for people who have distribution. So like, I look at, like publications in my field and see like who are the columnists there and who are the reporters there, because they have a distribution because they publish to that site. Or another type of distribution could be conference speaking. Like, could they mention you at conferences? So you just look at the speakers lists at different industry conferences in your space. You know, and another way is just on social media to see if they have a lot of followers, because you know, they could help amplify your message. So it's just looking around different ways and just making a big list. In my case, I have about 10 different lists, like for different subjects. You know, AdWords or you know, content marketing, or you know, just different subject area experts. You know, and then each list is about 500 to 1,000 people. So it's a tremendous amount of research.
So it sounds like we're getting a lot of people telling us their specific business, and I think this is a huge pain point for people who are small businesses or in niche markets. But it's that research, guys, the 80-20. Doing most of the time in your research and less time on your writing, I think, is what you're saying. Another question was about, you talked about syndicating content, you talked about blogging on LinkedIn. Should our audience be concerned about duplicating content? Should it go in one place over the other? How do you deal with that question?
Oh, there's plenty of syndicated content on the web, and Google says it's fine to syndicate. The one thing that you need to do is just, if you're going to syndicate, there's a proper way of syndicating. It's called using rel equals canonical. So it's just in the code of your HTML, one of the meta tags, you can just point to the original source of the article. That way the Google search engine doesn't get confused as to which is the original source and which is the copy. And if you do it that way, there's no problem for doing that at all.
Perfect. That was exactly what we were looking for. Let's see. When it comes to leveraging third-party sites, you talked about Inc. magazine or being a contributor. Have you had a hard time convincing your board or your company that this is valuable valuable way to spend your time? And what would you recommend to some of our audience who is having that issue, convincing their board or their higher-ups that this is a valuable way to spend their time and their resources?
Well, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, this speaks to the power of content marketing, and well, Steve, how do you respond to that? It's like,
yeah, I'd love to be involved in those distribution platforms.
Like the internet thing, it's like, people read content. It's like you should be producing it. I don't know. Is there anything else to say?
It's obviously, and if you can get, I would surprised be also makes the case of getting into magazines such as Inc. and things that Larry writes for, got such distribution. But yeah, if you write good content for those, huge distribution. So yeah, I'm surprised people need convincing necessarily.
Hey guys, let me. Some people might not be able to be an Inc. contributor, so I just want to explain this process a little bit. It takes a while. Like, I don't want you to set your sights on Inc. as your first target. Okay, basically what you do is you work your way up. Okay, so like, there's got to be some kind of local or regional publication in your area that could use your expertise in a column that's monthly or something like that. And you kind of set the bar kind of more achievable. You have a track record of publishing like once a month or once a week, and show some success, and maybe that you're their best blogger there, and then you kind of graduate to the next level, and you talk to this other publication and say, I'm the #1 publication at this little one. I'd love to do the blog for you at this other one. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like your career. I'm in my examples, I'm kind of fast forwarding to the end here, where like, I'm blogging on all these different places. It didn't start out that way. It actually took 5 or 6 years. But you got to just commit to a niche and kind of work your way up. All right?
That's awesome. And how do you go about, when you have your content and you're asking someone to syndicate it, what are you emailing them? What are you saying? How do you go about doing that?
Well, the first thing you need to do is check to see if the site actually syndicates other people's content. You know, and you can see, because usually when they syndicate content, it'll say like, this post originated from X, right? And then it's just a business discussion with the editor, you know, saying like, can I add value to your audience by allowing you to republish these articles and giving them like 3 samples or something like that. You know, it's kind of like a little business arrangement, basically.
Cool. I think that's a really, really helpful tip. Looks like our hour's up. We've answered or addressed most of the questions. If they still come in, feel free. You can email WordStream at marketingteam@wordstream.com. I'll put that in the chat. You can also talk to any of us on Twitter. And that's about it for today. Any last words?
Just thanks, Steve. Big fan of your stuff and everything you're doing in content analytics. So keep it up.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for inviting us on today. It's been great fun. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.